What is up, everyone? Welcome to another session of Seller Roundtable, simplifying selling into North America. We're excited to share another e-commerce roundtable with you, International Expansion Series Part 3. Again, if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Ryan Kramer. I'm with Ping Pong Payments. Thank you for joining us on our channel. But we have three other amazing partners that we have kind of all came together as one big mastermind group in Roundtable. We wanted to share the latest and greatest tips and tricks and insights into selling into different marketplaces around the world. We've already covered Australia and New Zealand, and we also have covered Europe. On part 3, we're going to talk about North America, which is where I'm at. We have a couple of other partners here. But again, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We are, all of our partners are around the world. Super excited to be joining you today here on not Crossover Commerce, but on this roundtable series, Crossover Commerce. We'll talk about it later if you want, but just wanted to start off by introducing our panel of experts, and I can go ahead and bring them in here today. Gentlemen, welcome. Nice to see each and every one of you again for part 3.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Awesome. For people who are joining us today, why don't we go clockwise? Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself quickly and let people know who you are and who you work for?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ryan. Nice to be back on the podcast after a small break, or the round table after a small break. I'm Jonathan Matthews. I work for VAT Global. We are a VAT compliance and technology firm assisting clients on a global scale with GST, tax registration, the ongoing compliance, and I manage the e-commerce and partners division. So excited to be here, and hopefully you'll get some good value from this.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining today. It's evening time where you're at, so we're happy that you stick around and wanted to work a little bit. You're on lockdown right now, so I don't think you're in an office right now, so just at home, right?
That's correct. Yeah. My bedroom.
Awesome. Exactly, right? Office, bedroom. It's all in one, right? We're all comfortable saying that. No shame here. From down under, thanks for joining tomorrow, Paul, from Merchant Spring. How are you today?
Joining you from Friday, the future.
I know. I love doing this.
I've got my coffee ready here. It's a little bit early, but I'm ready to go. I'm excited. It's been a while, as Jonathan said. I'm the founder of Merchant Spring. Merchant Spring is a analytics and management platform for professional marketplace sellers. We connect to over 72 different platforms across the world. And really, our aim is to help professional marketplace sellers give them all the tools and all the insights at their fingertips so they can trade their marketplaces harder and also just save a whole lot of admin time as well. So we've got customers in North America, Europe, and Australia. So great to be here, and thanks for the invite again, Ryan.
Of course, anytime. You're the one who's poking me. It's like, guys, it's happening this week. So you're always my reminder, man. But you're in the future, so that only makes sense. So Paul,
absolutely.
Again, welcome again. I appreciate you hopping on again so early, so everyone else can hop on this. Last but not least, our buddy and good friend over at Noverland, Francois. Francois, what's going on, man? You're in a new office. That's exciting.
New office, not too far from our old office, but a lot more room for a lot more people. So it's exciting there. And then, I was part of the founding team here at Noverland. And essentially, to wrap it up, we handle supply chain management solutions all the way across from sourcing, purchasing, and logistics globally. So if anyone's looking to source anything from China or handle logistics or quality control management, we have a centralized platform that does it all for you.
Amazing stuff. And again, welcome to everyone who's watching again on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us live. Again, this is an interactive series where we, the panel, are going to here to answer your questions. Again, our topic today, if we can keep it to North America, expanding into it, whether you're a first-time seller or have been a seller for a little bit, what are your questions? We have a panel expert again on VAT and compliance. We have one in multi-channel fulfillment and just kind of insights, and then obviously fulfillment and payments if you do the clock around the table. So all of us have insights in the various capacities in the industry, and we're more than happy to point you in the right direction as you see fit. So with that being said, gentlemen, we have a quick presentation for you who are watching us at home. Again, simplifying selling into North America. And as always, we're going to kick it off with our good friend down under, Paul. Paul, go ahead and take us away with your presentation.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, look, let me just help you guys set the scene a little bit and explore some of the options that exist in North America. There's quite a few of them, and I think some really interesting ones that perhaps don't get talked about as much. Now, let me just dive into first, perhaps just the overall market, right? So, Ryan, if you can give me that sort of slide with a map and a bunch of flags on it. Just to give a bit of perspective, right? We're talking North America. Obviously there's a few countries involved there, but it's just worth thinking about the size of the total e-commerce market, right? So I got these sets of Statistica yesterday, so they're fairly fresh. This is the product e-commerce market in those three countries, and obviously what's like super obvious, and most of you guys will already know this, is that the US is by far the largest market, right? Total e-commerce almost close to $500 billion with Mexico, less than Canada less than a tenth, and Mexico sort of 1/20th of that. I think it's a really important context because that may obviously gives you a bit of a steer of where the opportunity is, where you're going to invest your energies and efforts and the like, and particularly when it comes to sort of expanding to other marketplaces as well. What I would say, though, is obviously North America is one of the most developed markets when it comes to marketplaces and consumer adoption, right? So this slide actually here is I couldn't find a new one. This is 2 years old, and even 2 years ago, pretty much what it says is all consumers are like super comfortable with shopping on marketplaces, right? Now, I'm sure for some of the guys on the call here that are based in the US, that's completely obvious, right? They've been Amazon Prime members for like 20 years. It's just part of life, but it's not always true in other parts of the world. Like, for example, it's not yet the case here in Australia. So, certainly in North America, consumers are just super, super comfortable. It's almost like part of their daily routine. And actually what you find as well is, so marketplaces, and I'm talking like product e-commerce marketplaces, and obviously for some of them, there's a bit of a sort of a 1P or, say Amazon, vendor and Amazon seller 3P aspect to it. But marketplace combined, already take more than 50% share of the total e-commerce market. And I think in North America, that's pushing sort of almost like 2/3, so almost touching that 65% in terms of market share and growing. So there's a sort of obviously concept around yes, e-commerce is great, e-commerce is growing, but the big engine that's and when you lift up that bonnet, right, and the big engine and the cylinders that are really firing are marketplaces. So they're really great opportunities to be part of, especially in North America. So what are the options, right? A couple of different marketplaces. Some of them are obviously very familiar. So you guys would have heard of Amazon. So Amazon is present in all three markets, and that is really. It's great because it is fairly easy to sell into Mexico and into Canada, say if you're in the US. It's a great option. eBay is fairly similar too. So eBay is probably the second largest marketplace, depending on how you look at it. eBay's presence in Mexico is really, really limited, but in Canada it's a sizable operation. Then I'll talk about Walmart a bit more, but Walmart is really sort of the upcoming challenger in terms of this whole landscape. So Walmart operates in all three countries as well, particularly in the US. Has obviously following the acquisition of Jet.com a couple of years ago, and some of their recent announcements as recent as in March, where they really want to go after international sellers as well. It's a bit of a change of heart on Walmart's side, really growing quite strong as well. So you've got not just North America, but you've got Canada and Mexico as well. It is worth, and I'm going a little bit deep here, but it is worth noting that, say, Amazon runs essentially the same platform across the three different countries. It's not the same with Walmart. So it's not as easy as, say, if you're listing on Walmart US to then expand and sell into the other regions as well. It's a little bit more tricky, particularly Mexico, where they run a completely different marketplace platform. But obviously there are options there. And then you've got some of the others, right? So Target, particularly their marketplace is called Target Plus. Target Plus is like tiny, right? Only has a couple of hundred sellers. But what is really interesting about Target, it's an invite-only marketplace, and certainly when we speak to our customers, those sellers that actually are able to get an invite and list on the platform, they do really, 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 really well. They're really happy for it. And certainly if you go into LinkedIn right now, you're seeing a lot of people asking questions. How do I get an invite? What do I have to do? I hate to disappoint the audience today because I don't have any silver bullets for that either. But I think it's certainly one to watch. And it's always that interesting concept, right, about this curated marketplaces where you have to be invited. Obviously, Target sitting on a great asset, great audience. If you get in, you really, could run your own race and sort of avoid that heavy competition that you'll find on the likes of Amazon. So just some other things to consider as well. Wayfair, obviously one of the largest marketplaces and platforms when it comes to home and furnitures and those sorts of things. Very, very popular, but very category specific. And then you've got some others on the list there as well. So Wish is actually growing quite significantly. And actually what's interesting about Wish, so for the last few years, 95% of the sellers on Wish have come out of China, are based in China. This year, particularly with COVID, we've seen a massive shift. So some numbers reporting as many as sort of 40 to 50% of sellers are now based in North America. Now, I think the numbers are not completely accurate. I think it's slightly overstated through the use of VPNs and all of that. But really interesting to see people from North America jumping on that, and other markets outside China really jumping on the Wish platform as well. And then in the US, we've got some other options there. Newegg and Sears. Not enormous amount going on there, and Newegg being sort of stronger in terms of the electronic space and the like. Again, curated, a bit harder to get onto. Certainly a good option for some sellers. Look, Mexico and Canada obviously smaller, but I would say obviously there's a good option there in terms of Mexico beyond the ones we've spoken about. Is Best Buy for electronics. Really great option if you're selling to that category. And then actually, last but not least, Etsy. I'll talk about it a bit more, but Etsy's just gone through the roof, right? Globally, not just in North America. So if you're sort of, smaller type of products, more of the sort of arty, handcrafted, or products that have a good fit with that platform, I think it's a really interesting proposition as well. So let's just look at some of the metrics. All these slides, by the way, are available on our landing page. So don't feel like you have to write all these down. I've just grabbed a couple of stats from SimilarWeb, comparing all of those 10 marketplaces in the US. I'm not going to run through every single number, so don't worry. But I'm just going to draw your attention to say sort of, Amazon along the top left there, monthly unique visits, 512 million. So that is absolutely massive. So as you can see, eBay, they're right there. They're getting only half the size of the audience that Amazon does. But what is really phenomenal is the visits and the duration. So there's a little sort of trophy next to it. That's just to indicate that Amazon is sort of standing above all these other guys. So visits, they're visiting at least 5 times for every unique visitor. They're spending 7 minutes. They're looking at 8 pages. So really what that means is Amazon customers are really entrenched and really engaged with the Amazon platform. So certainly for those sellers that are looking to really build the brand, and some of them are looking to put things on Amazon to build it, get it to a sizable business, and then actually take their brand elsewhere into other channels, whether offline or online. It's really kind of a must start there. So yeah, very, very interesting. Of course, I don't have a slide on that, but certainly when we talk to our customers about expansion into the US and particularly Amazon, there's some really basics that people are not familiar with. So first of all, being part of Amazon Prime, or putting your inventory in fulfilled by Amazon is just a must, right? Openly, when we talk to clients, maybe we're a bit picky, but we're saying, look, if you're not prepared to use Amazon's fulfillment service, then you're really at a competitive disadvantage. And it's almost, sort of don't put it in these words, but it's basically it's no point really launching unless you've got some crazy, unique, odd-sized product. So if you're considering Amazon in the US, certainly FBA is really a must, and think through the costs and that you're prepared to do that. And being part of Amazon Prime, I think most Americans now have an Amazon Prime membership, and they're looking specifically for that. And there's lots of other benefits with that too. The other big factor, obviously, is the advertising side on Amazon. Amazon is a very competitive platform, both in terms of being found and getting your organic search ranking up, and then obviously there's a whole buy box component to it. But certainly, you need to have a really solid strategy in place and a decent budget, might I add, in order to really get that initial traction, to get that sales history, to get those reviews. You're going to have to set a sizable budget aside marketing-wise to really do that. Obviously, it depends a little bit on the number of products or ASINs and the like. But this is certainly when I'm talking to sellers who are based internationally, can be a bit of a sticking point because we're asking them to say, hey, send a whole lot of inventory over to Amazon to get started, but also now commit to spending a whole lot of marketing dollars too. And sometimes that can be a bit of a stumbling block. So make sure you really look at the upfront investment that is required in order to do that. Now, once you get it right, the prize is good. We have thousands of sellers connected to our platform, and we can see the volume of stores. The volume these stores are doing. In fact, and many times we've got issues with 1 or 2 stores now where our APIs are simply, or Amazon's APIs, I should say, are simply not keeping up with the amount of orders that are being placed on the platform. So in other words, we can't get the orders quickly enough. If you get it right, obviously you can build a sizable business, very large business, right in that space. All right, let me just talk a little bit about some non-Amazon stuff. I spoke about Etsy before. There's a great resource called Marketplace Pulse. They put out lots of stats and insights into the different marketplaces with a bit of a focus on North America. Etsy here, as you can see, the number of active sellers has gone to 4 million, and certainly during COVID, you guys can all see that hockey stick here, right? It's really just gone through the roof. So it just shows you that many, many sellers are moving onto that platform, and I would say also more of the professional sellers as opposed to sort of the artists and the hobbyists. So great option to look at if this is a good fit for your product. I think I've got something on Walmart there as well. If you just have a look at the next slide. Yep, similar sort of thing. Now Walmart, for many, many years, they were really not growing their seller base all that much. As you can see, in the last year, they've really accelerated. They've really have made it a strategic priority of their business. They're clearly going after Amazon. They've just opened, as I mentioned before, their platform to international sellers. I think they've got a whole operation on the ground now in China to recruit sellers as well. And they're growing, right? But what's interesting here is you look at those numbers, 68,000 active sellers compared to something like, depending on how you look at it, 3 million on Amazon. That is interesting, right? Because Walmart itself is a huge website with a huge traffic. And again, 68,000 is a lot of sellers, but it's nowhere near the level of competition you'll find on Amazon. So, when the dust settles and you look at sort of demand versus supply, you may find that Walmart is a great option for you. Feel free to check those guys out. And last but not least, I've just spoken about, I think is there one on Target there? Or did I take that out? Target Plus. Is there one? Is it before that?
Nope. I'm all blank. That's all I got.
That's my mistake of doing this really early. I was going to show you the Target slide. They've only got a couple of hundred, but Target Plus, really interesting platform. Go and check it out. So let me pause it there, and I'm about to hand over to my colleagues on the call to talk about some other aspects. But I want to give a quick plug for our global marketplace management platform. It is a great add to your current integration or analytics stack. The ability to see all of your dashboards, whether it be Amazon, eBay, Walmart, or any of the other 70 marketplaces that we connect to, all in our dashboard with drillable functionality, allowing you to really save on time and drive your sales much, much harder. We've got a special offer for everyone on the call and listening to this or viewing this podcast later. Head to our website or click on that button there and get 50% off our enterprise plan. So go and check that out. All right. Handing back to you, Ryan.
I'm taking notes in the background, as you can see. Like I'm the student of the game. But some stats that Paul threw out there that I would like to kind of clarify too. Good stat on the Etsy seller, because that is a booming platform that we're starting to see, triple growth year over year, which they were pretty consistent. But now that obviously everyone is stuck at home, now is the time that everyone's starting to find and monetize their own arts and crafts at home. So that's a platform to definitely keep an eye out for. Not just handcrafted items. I know that there's like processed electronic stuff where it's technically handmade, but that is a platform that's significantly growing. You mentioned lots of people have Amazon Prime membership. A stat that I came across yesterday: 1 in 3 Americans have Americans in general. 1 in 3, and with the census, I think 335 million, 350 million people. It's a lot of Amazon Prime subscriptions. So just north of 100 million subscribers. Amazon growing that number will only significantly just reach and grow that number moving forward. Target as well. They, for about 2.5 years now, people have been invited to sell on their platform. I believe the amount of sellers, it's 250 to 300. So it's definitely way less than the 6 million that Amazon has globally, or at least counts. But once Target opens that up, and especially here in the North America market, that can only start to increase profitability in sellers once they open that up. We're assuming in the near future. So great stuff as always, Paul. Next on our list, I believe we have Mr. Jonathan from VAT Global. Jonathan, you ready to go, sir?
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Awesome.
Ryan. Always tough to follow Paul. Always in great detail. Always goes in great detail.
With the help, Paul.
Paul just likes to kick us off with all the stats, and he makes us clean up right after him. So it's perfectly fine.
That's it.
I like to use lots of colors. Lots of colors.
Exactly. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm visually fascinated with it all.
I'm also, I actually enjoy your presentation more than I think the clients will enjoy mine, because tax is a lot more, not as intriguing and not really in that sense.
Jonathan, I think just one quick question. I think I was going to say we are just in and out with your audio. So I think we got you now, but we're good to go.
Okay. Just double checking that it's working.
Yep. We're good. Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, if we can just move to perfect. That's the slide. So US is in many ways one large country, but from a tax perspective, it could almost be viewed as 51 different countries. Each state has really its own regulations. So I thought really just to kind of break it down in that the US doesn't actually have a national sales tax system. Its indirect taxes are posed on a state level. Now, there are 45 states that have put into place a sales tax regime, and these vary from about 2.9 to 7.5, 7.25%. And then you've got 35 local governments below that, with many more counties and cities that also can apply their own VAT or GST rates. And those range from about 1 to 5%. So that means there's only 5. I think now with Washington being an additional state, it would be an extra one. So 6 that don't have a GST regime, and those would be Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. And the consequence of this is that depending on where you're selling to, there can actually be around 10,000 different tax rates that you would have to charge sellers at the point of sale, which makes it really confusing as a starting point. So if we can just kind of move to the next slide, it's really just important to determine who is required to register for sales and use taxes. What you charge comes a bit later, but it's really determining who's going to charge. So really the rules on a global level are somewhat similar in that every entity that is engaged in business as defined by the taxing state. So if anyone had listened to the previous webinars or Roundtable, they would know that the state, or in Europe, for example, the country can choose their rate. Here, it's your state. And then your state has counties and cities, and each one can apply that. So it also goes to a point that the state can define what engaged in business means. Generally, it's fairly common. And since 2019, and actually Wayfair versus South Dakota was the case, there's been a sweeping move, slowly, sweeping might not be the right term, but there's been a move that has kind of moved across the US where things are starting to align and starting to simplify. And that would be, call it the third point, in which states are moving towards determining whether a seller is engaged in business in the state based on economic thresholds. Now, that's an annual volume or a number of transactions. So if I'm selling to a state a certain amount of money, it's generally around 100,000 US dollars or 200 sales. Now, it's kind of that scenario, either or, whichever comes first. And since 2019, 24 states. Now that's about 10, 12 a year. I know things in government take long to move. So 24 states in roughly 2 years is quite speedy. Now, once you are registered in these different states, the question then becomes, is the ongoing obligation similar? And it really is. So sales or sellers are then required to file and report these taxes in different frequencies, and the frequencies are also determined by the state. So again, it's really just so many permutations that can happen. Now, as a general rule, and I think this not so much an EU or Australia/New Zealand rule, quite a US rule, is that the more revenue you make, the more frequent the tax office is going to request that you submit your returns. And you'll see there that monthly being the most common, but you can have semi-monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, and annually. And we can just go to the next slide. Now, the threshold would actually be why you register. So we would revert back to that $100,000 or the 200 transactions, and you might have a business that wants to voluntarily register. This is also a common indirect tax question. And the question then becomes, can you, and do you want to? So from a can I perspective, yes, you can. And once you are registered, even if it is before you have crossed that threshold, whether it be the economic or the volume, you then fit into, you have to comply with the ongoing obligations. And there's a question that's always asked, which is, do overseas companies need a fiscal representative? So again, the US being so big, it's a continent in itself. You looking at it on a state level. So it can be in some states, it's not required in others. And then it's, again, a question of what is the purpose of fiscal representation? So sometimes it's more for legal notices, official applications, official notes, and things of that nature. So just really important to understand in which state these are required and in which state you need to register, and then what comes off that requirement. Some states do require, call it a bond or an upfront payment. So again, it's vitally important just to know where you're registering and what obligations come with it. So if we can just go to the next slide. A lot of this, or where you would need to register, is determined by an economic nexus. And an economic nexus used to mean, and it was quite simple, you had a physical presence. So you had an employee in a state, or you had stock in a state, or you had an office, or some type of presence. And that definition now means either a physical presence or the economic requirements, which is the $100,000 or the 200 sales. Now, again, that also varies. So that's an average, and that's the most common amounts, but there are states that it differs. And just call it two simple examples of how states vary and how the taxes would vary is, one state would require you to charge sales tax on shipping, as shipping is considered part and crucial to the product. So it's part of the product. Other states are, it's a completely separate service and it's something that is not part of the product. Others would then require you to renew your sales tax license yearly, and some states you register once and you never have to look at it again. So these types of requirements are becoming are being implemented more and will become more common as these new economic nexus laws and regulations come in. So you now then move to where, if you have sales tax nexuses in states that require sales tax collection, then you're required to collect sales tax from all buyers in that state, regardless of where the item is shipped. So these would be your 45 states where your first obligation is to collect tax. Then you have these 5 states where if you don't have sales tax nexus in that state, then you're not required to collect taxes when you sell online. So those are your 5 states. Again, it does also seem as though those 5 states will kind of come into these 45 states, and there will be no states where you can't not charge GST and you have to have a nexus. So the next slide is very much, again, indirect taxes seem to be quite similar on a global scale. So you have what we call in the US origin versus destination-based sales tax. So you can see here that destination, being the blue, seems to be the more common, and origin is less common today. Again, if we went back about 10 years, that would flip, and then you have your no sales tax states. Now, this is very much referring to sales within your state. So, for example, if we were to take Texas, where it is an origin-based state, within Texas, you have, call it maybe Dallas, and now if you sell from Dallas to another county or city in Texas, you're going to charge the tax rate of Texas because you're based there and you're charging the origin rate. Then we could go to destination-based, where we look at Florida. So in Florida, you would then charge the GST rate where your customer's based within Florida. So small nuances. A lot of technology has been built by some really good companies in the US that have serviced these abilities with these 10,000 back rate or GST rates, because you would never be able to do it on your own on a spreadsheet. So that's really the automation that's in the US market, much greater than in the EU or the global market, due to the complexity of the US system. And on the next slide, we have what we call a remote sale. Now, a remote sale is where I'm selling from Florida to Texas, out of state. And again, that same logic would apply, which is, am I charging the GST rate where I'm based, or am I charging the GST rate where my client is based? And as you can see, the map immediately goes very much in the favor of destination. And that is where that threshold I was talking about has kicked in, which is the 200 orders, which is actually quite low. And the moment you cross that, most states then say you need to charge the GST rate where our customer is based. And that's where it became even more complex, because now you have more states, more counties, more towns requiring you charge their VAT rate for each sale. And that 10,000 maximum number of sales, if you're a big business selling on Amazon with stock in multiple fulfillment centers where you need to be registered, selling all over, you will be maxing out, you will be charging thousands of different GST rates in a month, in a quarter, possibly tens of thousands of GST rates in a year, which is highly, highly unique to the US market, makes it highly complicated. I think, like I've said, there's solutions that really help sellers to manage this. So plugins that at the point of sale will determine, based on the IP address where the client is based, will apply the correct logic and rules, and will then charge the correct VAT rate or GST rate. A lot of platforms actually take on the obligation of collecting and remitting the taxes to the different tax authorities. But it's ensuring that the correct rate is charged at the point of sale so that you're not undercharging and then getting, call it, a bill from the tax office saying you owe us X. So that's really where these solutions kind of kick in and are very powerful. Slightly different to the rest of the world, which you as the seller collect the taxes and then retrospectively at the end of the month or the end of the quarter make that payment. In the US, Amazon actually doesn't remit the tax to you, but you've got to make sure you charge the correct rate so that when Amazon pay it off, your account matches. So I think that's the real crucial step. Rest of the world is actually catching up. In Europe, there have been legislative changes that are now making Amazon liable for these collections. So we're kind of heading in the US direction. I'd say the rest of the world is a lot simpler in terms of the rates they charge. No one's charging per province or state. And that's where the complexity comes in. And it almost needs to be viewed as a variety of countries from a tax perspective. So I think I just wanted to kind of touch on Canada as well, which is pretty interesting in the next slide. Now, Canada does have a federal tax administration, and it's called GST and HST. So Canada's GST is general sales tax, and then your HST is your harmonized sales tax. But then Canada has a few states that thought they would, get in on the act, and they've also got PST, which is your provincial sales tax, and Quebec went a step further and got their own sales tax, QST, Quebec sales tax. And when selling cross-border, call it from the US to Canada, you've got a 30,000 Canadian dollar threshold where you don't have to charge Canadian GST. And then above that amount, you need to charge Canadian GST and register for GST in Canada. Now, the next slide is when can a foreign business register? So similar question to in the US, and I think it applies globally, is that sometimes you want to preemptively get ahead of these obligations, and then it reverts back to can I. So in Australia, you can pre-register. It's encouraged in many ways if it's a big market and you foresee it as being something that ensures that you never really have to deal with penalties and tax obligations from a retrospective perspective, which often have penalties, and it takes audits and time and money to clean those up before you're really able to run. So important to kind of in the back of your minds understand that being ahead of the tax obligations often allows you to move much quicker once you are moving in that country. You don't really have these obligations to worry about. You've just got your submissions. And sometimes in Canada, you actually need to register in order to claim back an input. So again, it might get a little bit technical. So if anyone watching or listening wants to reach out, I think we can go into greater detail, specific questions. Now, often tax offices require deposits for foreign companies. It's a protection method, Canada being one of them. However, in Canada, you just apply, you write to the tax office, and often they'll waive that. And if, call it for the next 6 to 9, 12 months, you're a good paying customer and you're on top of your obligations, they normally just waive that. And it then goes to importing goods. How are goods dealt with on importation? So again, quite a complex question, but one I thought crucial to just touch on. Similar to most countries, there's DAP, there's DDP, there's DDU, there's Ex-Works. There's so many different shipping terms that you can have, but they do vary, and it's important that the tax application will vary based on numerous elements, including the registration status of the supplier and the type of the imported goods. I think, again, it's quite technical and hard to explain in a simple example. So if anyone has questions at a later stage, we can always deal with those types of examples. But when importing goods, you do have considerations to think of. I think that's the crucial thing with that point. And then on slide 10, I have actually answered this question, which is the voluntary registration, which is a yes. And then in many countries, there are deferment schemes in Europe which allow you to delay paying that and possibly not paying that. So is that an option in Canada? Unfortunately not. You have to pay your import that or simplifications when moving goods into Canada, especially stock. So the answer is no, unfortunately. And then, do you require a fiscal rep in Canada? And the answer is no. Now that's a good thing. Fiscal rep generally comes at an increased cost because there is a additional compliance cost or risk on your compliance partner. So from that perspective, kind of trading into Canada is fairly low risk. You do just have to understand your initial cash flow burden, which would be from moving stock. And then you would also just need to be aware that your ongoing obligations are your submissions, but the risk that the compliance firm has and that you have is quite low. So should be a fairly interesting market to want to trade in. And especially as Paul was showing, quite small. So the potential for growth definitely exists. If we can just go to the next slide. You now have, call it your frequencies in Canada. So a non-established business must provide financial guarantee. Again, we've discussed that and how it can be removed. And then you really just have your frequency. So monthly filings are normally businesses with an annual turnover in excess of 6 million Canadian dollars. Quarterly filing is with between 1.5 and 6 million. And then an annual filing is less than 1.5 million. So somewhat similar to the US in that the higher your sales, the lower or the less frequent your submissions. And then on to just the second last slide, which is the general rates in Canada. So the general rates in Canada range from roughly 5 to 15%, and then state dependent would be reduced. The registration threshold is NA. So the moment you have stock, you are required to register and charge GST, PST, QST, or HST. And then any clients that are interested in kind of moving ahead or reaching out to that global, our offer is extended. It remains for the previous roundtables, and it will continue to remain. Reach out, really delve into and understand your business, understand your movements of stock, understand where you're selling, your platforms, and really provide you with a roadmap as to how you can remain compliant in the US, Canada, and then 10% off the registration fee in the USA and or Canada. Now, that is the end of my slides. And I just wanted to touch on Mexico, which is part of North America, but not mentioned here, in that there's no concept of non-resident VAT registration in Mexico. So unless you have an entity in Mexico, you can't register for GST/VAT. That would be kind of the simple way of putting it, unless you're selling a digital service, a subscription, a Netflix, a SoundCloud, something of that nature.
Good stuff, man. As always, not the fun or not the fun, flashy stuff the rest of us, but it's all super important in terms of being able to understand. Like you said, there's like almost 51 or 52 different provenances within the United States alone. Super technical. Luckily, if I correct me if I'm wrong, Amazon handles a lot of the front end, but it's you, the seller's responsibility to make sure that you're still fulfilling the needs of paying whatever Amazon collects, paying those GST and QVT. Is that what it was for Quebec? They have to come up with their own tax. Those Canadians, Yeah, for those silly Canadians.
So
anyways,
so Ryan, you're
so go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct in that Amazon take on a huge burden and remit a lot of the taxes. But what's crucial is that sellers are still required to register and account for those sales. So it's really just a break in information. Is one party's paying, the other party is submitting the reporting. And when the two match, it's a good day. When the two don't match, it's not a good day, and generally for the seller. So sellers need to be very cognizant to stay ahead. The nice thing with the US is that a lot of these plugins charge the correct VAT rate at the point of sale. You really just got to make sure that it's something you think of before you start going wild on all of your marketing spend, as Paul says. But once you've really got that set up, then it's really turn on the dial and go. And it's automated to the nth degree. Brilliant services out there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. Again, it's not finding those partners that are like yourself. If there's anyone who can wade through the waters, it's going to be companies like VAT Global, being able to make sure that you're complying, you're staying on top of everything and making sure that everything kind of at the end matches, because that's never a good day when you're either not paying your tax or they don't match up. Someone's along the way has messed up. So you want to make sure that you have someone on your side, whether it's accounting or people like, VAT Global as well. Thanks so much for hopping on that. Of course, that brings us to our third person, the other headache, if you will, the logistics side of things. We all manage a lot of headache spaces. So this is just something that, Francois is very easy talking about. Oh yeah, just figure out logistics, months in advance, no problem, no sweat, right? That's what they're good at.
Yeah, it's hard. But I mean, it's Jonathan and I, we're stuck with the unsexy side, but is the most critical side to any business, right? I mean, you could do all the research in the world, and I recommend doing the research properly with Merchant Spring IO, setting up your payments with ping pong payments, of course, but without setting up the proper HS codes and without understanding how to handle VAT and without knowing how you're going to get your products to the markets that you're going to sell in, you're nothing. So I'm glad that we got to bring together this panel and really make this cohesive e-commerce roundtable. So kudos to you guys, Jonathan. I mean, honestly, they couldn't do anything without us. But that's besides the point.
Say what we all think. It is what it is.
You are spot on.
All right. With that being said, jumping right into it, the thing that none of us can handle besides Francois. Take it away, man.
It's a fun topic. Yeah, we're talking about logistics and international freight logistics, particularly to North America, is a mess, and it's a mess globally. And we're still very much in this residual effect from COVID, from impacts like the Suez Canal. Which is just having vast knock-on effects. And this is tracking all the way up to, sourcing and manufacturing through logistics. And the biggest elephant in the room, I try to brighten this up a little bit, is freight. Right. And freight is really what's going to get your product into those warehouses. So those warehouses can ship them out to your consumers. That way you can make those sales. That way you could pay your VAT. That way you could use ping pong to actually process your payments. So freight is a topic of the hour, and it's ridiculous. That's why we're going to talk about it so much today. And the biggest elephant in the room are the rates and lead times. And I think when it comes to logistics and supply chain, one, it's very boring, so no one wants to talk about it. But once businesses start to see those numbers and they realize that you just can't do business as usual, that's where I think I keep getting this wrong today. It's the second time I'm going to try to say it, but I think the rooster is home, or chicken's home to roost, right? Something along those lines. And
sounds right to me.
Yeah, something along those lines. And so we're going to talk very specifically about May. And it's been very difficult in 2020. And I think, as we've started the roundtable, it's just progressively gotten worse and worse, realistically. So a few key things to really hit are booking lead times. And for those of you that don't know what a booking lead time is, it is essentially buying your ticket for a flight. Right. Or in this case, buying your ticket to actually go onto a boat or a vessel, and having a spot in the container to put on that vessel itself. And traditionally, you might book it 1 to 3 weeks. Typically, you're somewhere around the 1 to 2 week lead time from the moment that that your products are going to be done, which is known as a cargo ready date, or the CRD you might see in some cases, to when it's actually going to be booked in and gated in. So right now we're seeing that go to 4 to 5 weeks, in some cases 6 weeks. And it's really just messing up the entire process of trying to get the products out of the manufacturer into a container, to the ports, from the ports onto the vessel, and then from that vessel transported across. So that's becoming a forecasting nightmare for a lot of businesses because they just don't know what to do with their inventory or how to get it to where it needs to go. Transportation lead times is another thing that is just becoming more and more ridiculous, again, because of these knock-on effects that we're seeing from COVID, as well as from the Suez Canal, that a lot of businesses that I've spoken to think that only impact, the EU or only impact Northern Africa or the UK. That is not the case. We're 100% seeing those impacts right here in the US. And whether that's because the vessels are still playing catch up, whether that's because the global container shortage, that one instance help accentuate that. And so now we're still playing catch up with the containers. We're seeing these transportation lead times where traditional lead time to go from, let's say, Ningbo to Long Beach or to Oakland might traditionally take about 21 to 26 days. We're seeing that take about 35 to 55 days to actually get to the final destination. And that could be because of rolled cargo or blank sailings. And essentially, for anyone that doesn't know what these terms mean for rolled cargo and blank sailings, rolled cargo is when you have your containers at the port and they're ready to go. You have a booking date. Let's say it's supposed to be shipped out tomorrow, right? And they're going to they use the term roll because they roll you onto the next vessel if it can't go onto that vessel. And there's several reasons for that, and that's something that we are going to touch on. But that might extend your lead time by a week. Once it gets to the U.S., if it's going into, if it's going to the West Coast, probably Long Beach or Oakland, and those ports are still backed up, believe it or not. And we are seeing this for months now. I mean, the entire 2021, we've seen these ports be completely jammed. And so with that happening, that might extend your lead time by a few weeks. If you get, let's say a custom examination, that might extend it by a few weeks because their warehouses are also full. If it has to go on a train and be railed across from the West Coast to the East Coast because of all the demand and the backup that they still have, or this backlog that they still have, that might add a few weeks. So there's all these careful considerations that you have to have when it comes to figuring out your supply chain. You're not going to be able to do that alone. You're going to have the right solutions and partners for it. But talking about, or go back one second. I'm sorry. Going back to some of these pricings. So LCL, 1 cubic meter, $800 to $1,100. And that's what we're sort of seeing going directly to Amazon FBA logistics centers. Same thing for 40-foot containers. I mean, that's anywhere from $11,000 to $13,000. I've seen a few quotes or bids that are going to Dallas for, I think it's upwards of $14,000. And these are companies that are actually bidding these amounts so they could win that spot and their cargo doesn't get rolled. Keep in mind, when you pay your freight forwarder, it does not mean that you have anything locked in or guaranteed. In today's environment, especially, nothing is guaranteed. Absolutely nothing. So I would take, any promises with a grain of salt. Just make sure that once it's actually booked in, that they're going to keep you updated. And, they have a lot going on because they have to manage a lot of customers and a lot of issues and backlogs the freight forwarders do. So check in on them. Make sure that you establish a great working relationship, and they're going to be more open with where exactly is your cargo, and if they can't track it, they're at least going to try to track it down for you because it is very messy at the ports also. And just a little fun fact also, keeping in mind that China is working 24/7 when it comes to exporting products, whereas the US, we have hours. For some reason, we have working hours at the ports with all these backlogs. So we're not working 24/7 to actually get all this cleared in. But then when it comes to express air freight, typical lead time somewhere around 5 to 10 days. We're seeing about double to triple that right now. Of course, there's some great instances where it still stays between 5 to 10 business days, but typically it's looking at somewhere around 15 to 25 days. So just account for that. And you're paying somewhere along the lines of 3 to 5 times what you normally would be paying for express air freight. And if we continue to see some of these flights be grounded because the flight crew gets COVID or whatever the case may be, you're only going to see the delays, the lead time get longer. You're also going to see these costs keep going up. So just keep all that in mind when you are actually planning out your logistics.
Hey, friend, so a real quick question from the audience. How long do you think it will take for a backlog in the U.S. ports to clear? Is that going to be in time for the Christmas buildup, or do you think it's a new normal?
It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse with the holidays coming up. It's going to get worse with more people shopping for the holidays through e-commerce. I think we're not going to see, and this is my personal opinion. Everyone has their own view on it, but looking at it from the sourcing and manufacturing perspective, through customs clearance, through domestic transportation, through 3PLs just starting to get completely stocked up, and companies continuing to place larger orders in anticipation of the holiday season. I don't think it's going to end anywhere in 2021. I think this might even be a worse year than 2020, believe it or not. I think it's going to present a lot of opportunities, tremendous opportunities, and you can capitalize on these opportunities. But 2021 is going to be a tough year, and it's those that have the capital, those that can plan out and manage their inventory more effectively through things like SoStocked. I just spoke with Chelsea Fossum, amazing company. What they're looking at doing is just optimizing inventory management, forecasting. If you can get these things under your belt, one, I think you're going to be able to increase the valuation of your company if you are planning on exiting, but two, you're going to survive. Only those that actually understand their supply chain and are able to manage it effectively, and that can keep products in stock, those are the companies that are going to survive. The ones that are willing to pay a little bit more, the ones that aren't going to be waiting for weeks to wait for the container pricing to go down or for availability to open up with at the shipping ports. These delays are not going away anytime soon. So plan ahead. I hope that answered the question.
Yep, and buy your Christmas gifts now.
Buy your Christmas gifts now.
So we don't have to worry about that as a consumer later. So, but anyway, or anything running out of stock.
Yeah, don't wait for Black Friday. Go shop today.
Prime Day might be our Black Friday day. Anyways, sorry to divert us for a second, whoops, there we go. And there we go. Whoops, there we go. PowerPoints are hard.
So a little bit more to consider with all of this, if I didn't dive deep enough into logistics already. The global container shortage, this is something that I keep accentuating, and it's so important to note. And if you don't know about it, it's a quick Google search away. This is not hidden information by any means. Tons of articles on it, probably just not articles that you're interested in, because again, this is the unsexy side. So they're not targeting you with ads. They're probably selling subscriptions through the Wall Street Journal and very small publications. Also, Supply Chain Brain is another great resource to check out. So this global container shortage is very much happening. Like I was talking about before, there are companies that are paying $13,000, $14,000 just for a 40-foot container. These are going to go to the highest bidders, and the highest bidders are the ones that want to ensure that they have inventory, that don't want to stock out by any means necessary, and that are going to be willing to pay that, and probably pay it at either a break even or at a loss. But what they realize is that this is going to be the time that their competitors can't get that container that they're paying for. So keep that in mind. And a question that I think I get every single time that I talk about this is, well, why don't they just make more containers? And the answer is they are. And they're making it at, I wouldn't say max capacity, but they're making them nonetheless. So the way that containers work is they produce them, and then they lease them out. And so when they lease them out, that's when they make their money back. They don't have a huge incentive with making more containers. There's only a certain cost to a container. I think it's somewhere along the lines of like $4,000 for one container itself. So they are still producing containers. That production itself can't keep up with the global demand. And so now you're finding a lot of major corporations that are finding innovative solutions to get these containers from the US, from Canada, from Europe, all back to Asia, so they can start to export more. As they start to export more, we hope that this supply is going to be taken care of. Even marginally, it's going to make a massive difference. But they don't have an incentive, again, to make more containers, because you're going to end up paying more at the end of the day. And that's where they're going to boost all their profits. And then general rate increases. This is another thing that a lot of people don't realize, but shipping carriers will place something called a GRI, and they'll release these typically bi-weekly on the 1st and the 15th of every month. And these are trade lane specific. So they might say from China to Long Beach, the blanket cost from the shipping carriers to the freight forwarders, let's just say is $6,000 per 40-foot. 40-foot container. Now, they're not, of course, not going to pass along that cost directly to you. They're going to mark that up and then pass it on to you. So you're going to see general rate increases every 2 weeks. So one quote that you get this month is not going to be the same quote that you get at the end of this month, or possibly even 2 weeks later. So again, there's no guarantees here. Make sure that you keep up with that. Flexport is a great resource when it comes to keeping up with GRIs. They do make announcements. So I would definitely check out Flexport when it comes to GRIs. Blank sailings, we're looking at this. This is what I was talking about with the world cargo. So 5 to 10% of all sailings from Asia to North America in the month of May is around what we're looking at. So that means 5 to 10% of all cargo is being rolled on, or we're having blank sailings for them. And this is just going to continue happening as we continue to stockpile this demand. And lastly, for this slide, it's domestic freight. When we're talking about trucking, again, we're talking about all these knock-on effects with supply chain, but when we're talking particularly about trucking, when we're talking about rail freight, all this is still accumulating a backlog. And then when you look even deeper at like the trucking industry, there is a lack of truckers, literal people, human beings, to get into trucks and drive them. And who knows where this is going to go in the next decade, let's say. I mean, and we're coming up with new innovative solutions, more automation with driving and everything, which is fantastic. But we have to look at the now. So again, if you're not familiar with this, make sure that you Google it. Everything lives online. There is the entire supply chain that you can learn online. You don't have to go to a great accredited university to learn supply chain. It's all free. Just Google it. That's the last thing to say on that slide. And solutions. So to some, this sounds terrifying. To others that might not be feeling the impact as much, this sounds like crock of poop, I guess is a better way to put it. So it's important to find solutions not only when you need them, but think about them early on. Think about them before anything ever happens. That way you could plan quickly and you could have the right processes in place. So if you are not familiar yet with what expedited sea freight is, it's essentially just smaller vessels and freight that can get to the final destination quicker, or from, let's say, China to the West Coast significantly quicker. It's a lot more expensive, so you're getting what you pay for. But there are options like guaranteed spots, which is very, very hard to come by. And again, you're paying an arm and a leg, but without inventory, you have no sales. So it's important to note that there is expedited sea freight. I'm still seeing a lot of businesses that are shopping for prices also. And I think particularly even in the Amazon groups, a lot of them that I'm part of, I still see a ton of people saying, well, where's the cheapest freight forwarder? Where's the cheapest factory? Where's the cheapest this? Remember that you're getting what you pay for. So if you are going with the cheapest option, you're going to have the cheapest solution to any problem that you encounter. And what that means is they're probably not going to communicate these to you. They're probably going to overpromise and underdeliver. So you're getting what you pay for. Find a solution that's right for your business. Find a partner. Don't just find a transaction that charges you the least. And then shop around. It's important to shop around. But again, shop for solutions, not prices. When it comes to shipments, consider breaking those up into smaller LCL shipments. That way your cargo has less of a risk of arriving to the final destination. So of course, if you ship one 40-foot container and that has all of your cargo and that gets delayed at the port, or that gets delayed still at in China, for example, because it can't get onto a container, you could split that up into 4 smaller shipments. You're going to be paying a little bit more. Right now, you might even be paying about the same, but then you could continuously get more and more inventory into your warehouse that we can continue those sales. And last on freight is really, like I've been saying, it's a quick Google search away. Look up your ocean, look up port, look up rail, trucking, look those market updates weekly. Keep in mind that these are exactly what is driving your business. No matter where your inventory is, no matter if you're selling in Canada, in the US, and Mexico, it's all being affected by all these global impacts. Again, COVID, the Suez Canal, global container shortage. These are all very important things to note. And then when it comes to inventory, a few key points, be mindful of stock out. So you want to plan ahead. And, like Ryan so eloquently said, when I say it, it sounds like you should just magically come up with it. No, it requires a lot of planning. It requires dozens of hours potentially of planning out your marketing campaigns, planning out where your inventory is even right now, planning out seasonality of your products. So there's a lot more to supply chain than just the products itself. Of course, it comes with marketing. It comes with your supplier relationships, lead times, things like that. Finding the right 3PL partner. So this is not just finding a 3PL, but one that's right for your business, one that can take in maybe the smaller shipments of yours, one that can deconsolidate and help you diversify to other marketplaces. They might have partnerships with other marketplaces or have a connection for you. The better relationship you form with them, the more you'll be able to get out of that relationship. Talk to your supplier. Again, I was just talking to Chelsea Fossum over at SoStock the other day, and she was talking about just keeping inventory at your supplier. That is definitely an option. With all these delays in shipments, talk to your suppliers about better payment terms. So not necessarily driving down the cost, which I know your COGS are going up, but what's more important than having a cheaper product is having a product at all. So being able to negotiate that from a 30-70 split to maybe a 30-70 with a 70 upon delivery, that might be an option. Talk to your supplier. They're always going to be open as long as you're honest with them, as long as you're building a relationship and you don't just see it as transactional, they're going to be open to talk to you. And diversification. This is such an important topic also because 3PLs, they can be impacted by anything. We saw down in Texas when it had that freak snowstorm. All the 3PLs down there were trying to find innovative solutions to get the product out. And it was just a matter of, hey, carriers can't come pick this up. We don't have power. So some of the inventory just can't be scanned to get out to the consumers, whatever the case may be. Consider storing it on both coasts or maybe in California and Texas, as well as somewhere on the East Coast. Reach out to us at Noviland. We'd be more than glad to work with you. So find a 3PL solution that's right for your business also. And lastly, just like I was saying, reach out to Noviland, reach out to me anytime. I'd be more than glad to talk to you about analyzing your supply chain, reviewing what's coming up, talking about your projects, talk about any potential issues that you might have with current suppliers or with current freight forwarders. Whatever the case may be, find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook. I try to be as active as possible. But definitely sign up for Noviland and we'll make sure to get you right with supply chain.
Of course, all of that is the stuff that we want to hear. Make sure that, again, the reason why we do this is that everyone on this channel makes aware of their services, but also that we bring valuable information to everyone listening to the space. Like I said, with payments, supply chain logistics, we are the conglomerate of the unsexy topics of e-commerce, like Francois says, and I say a lot as well. But this is the stuff that you need to know to make yourself more profitable as a business as you continue to exit. Hopefully, whether that's this year or in the near future, or just operating a business at a high efficiency rate. So that's why we are doing this roundtable. And last but not least, I'll just kind of quickly touch on the payment side of things. Again, payment side structure is something that we want to quickly touch on. If you're a seller internationally, but also domestically, it's super important, depending on where you are in the world, to make sure that you're putting margins back or percentages back to your bottom line. Because if you have problems with supply chain logistics and you have to upbid to different suppliers or to different partners with 3PLs, it's going to be super important that you understand that with these kinds of things, you can apply money when you save it other places. So that's why with partners and companies like Ping Pong, we're able to take money that's rightfully yours and left on the table and apply it to different parts of your business, whether that's supplier pay, paying your entities, whether it's in China where, rates of raw goods might be higher than normal. you can actually save by paying in local currency. So it's allowing you to turn around supplier time and shipping times quicker when you pay them out in local currency. So it's super important to understand that you have this ability, not just paying out in US dollar, which is the number one currency in which most e-commerce players make their currencies payments. But knowing that when you can pay in local currency, it might effectively change that wait time from 10 days to 5 days, or 2 weeks down to 1 week. There can be all this different saving, not just money, but time, which is in the essence even more valuable than just putting a couple percentage points back to your bottom line. That being said, payments in terms of the United States or in North America, when you're receiving different dollar denominations, whether it's US dollar, Canadian dollar, or the Mexican peso, and you're outside the United States selling in different capacities, whether you're in Europe or Australia or in the UK, wherever you might be, you're converting the dollar, you're receiving the dollar or the Canadian dollar or the Mexican peso. You need to get back, and Amazon will essentially convert those funds for you. Don't let them do that, because again, that's not their bread and butter. Their main objective is to make sure that you might be efficient for them to convert those funds for you, but a new payment provider network actually was released by them so that third parties can actually handle those kinds of payments for you, the seller. So make sure you're partnering with an approved participant like a ping pong in order to save money when money gets converted back to your wherever you might be located in the world. So that being said, payments are super important because it's not as easy as just plugging in your bank account and receiving funds from that marketplace, whether it's Etsy, which we talked about earlier, or Mercado Libre in Mexico or South America. But here in North America, if you're just selling on any marketplace and you're just receiving funds and you're converting through their ecosystem, you might be leaving anywhere from 2 to 5% of your total profits on the table. So that being said, when you can save funds just like that and put it towards, again, supply chain logistics and not quote unquote get what you pay for, then that allows you to start churning your inventory quicker, allows you to work with those higher end 3PLs. It's easier to pay off your VAT or GST quicker when it's not tied up in inventory. All these kinds of things compound on it in itself, especially when you're a big entity. It might not look like a lot of money at the get-go, but when you convert it and scale it, as most e-commerce sellers want to do, that is the key from the get-go. So just wanted to make that quick little point. It's super important when in a world where there's not a lot of different kinds of options that you have in terms of the financial side, with fees coming and going as much as they are with Amazon, and out of whim, they might change. This is one area that you actually have a handle on, and it would save you both, again, money, but also time. So that's what I wanted to say quickly today. That's kind of my little spiel in terms of the payment side of things. Gentlemen, is there anything that we didn't get to cover? Or I know we kind of passed the hour 15 mark. So everyone who did stay around for us, we appreciate the time as well. Is there anything we didn't touch on North America that we wanted to make sure we called out in the beginning or during someone's presentation? We covered a lot.
No,
that's okay.
I think Paul, you muted. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, I was muting. I think we should probably leave this to our next session. Maybe we can cover off at our next roundtable. But I was just really intrigued by the supply chain aspect that you talked about, Francois, because I think we're also seeing a lot of the opposite side, right? For particularly Amazon raising the bar on inventory performance index, putting more pressures on suppliers for the inventory that is in Amazon to actually make that work harder and perform. So it feels like, really the supply chain, and particularly inventory, they're getting challenges from across the whole spectrum. So it feels like, being good at that, managing inventory logistics is going to be, a massive key to success in the next 12 months. So, very interesting.
It's forcing the industry to start to mature, is what it's doing. We've been doing business as usual for the past, decade with Amazon, and now they're saying, hey, these are the legitimate business constraints that you're going to have to abide by. So it's forcing everyone to mature their supply chain, which I'm excited about. It's a great topic, as you could tell. I get giddy. The hairs on the back of my neck are standing up right now.
It's Christmas for Francois and company, so it's definitely a good time. And though I say good time, it's definitely important to work with smart people who know what they're doing in the industry. Obviously, as you scale, the more management you have to do with your team. You have to be smarter with payments coming and going. Obviously, VAT and being compliant with VAT Global. Obviously, managing different arms of your business, whether it's not just on Amazon, but it might be on, like we said, Etsy or eBay, or have a Shopify store, or Walmart.com through Merchant Spring, or just having containers on the water constantly around the world. You need to have partners like that, and then managing those payments, obviously, and all those currencies that you're going to be receiving from partners like us and Ping Pong. So again, everyone, thank you again for joining us on part 3 of our roundtable discussion. We're going to be talking about Asia and more about how to sell in the Asian markets here. I want to say about 2 weeks. Be on the lookout for more announcements. Subscribe to all of our social media channels and be on the lookout. Make sure you follow all these gentlemen here on the panel as well. But gentlemen, thank you so much for hopping on talking North America with me here today. It's always a pleasure to see your bright and shining faces, no matter if it's late at night or early in the morning. We're e-commerce is never sleeping, like you said, Francois. There's no 9 to 5 with us. We're always constantly churning, and someone's working around the world. So that being said, thank you all 3 of you for joining again here on the roundtable.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.
We'll see you next time, everyone. Take care.